Hi, welcome to Changemakers, a smarter school podcast exploring how to live a successful and happy life. I am Katlego, your host. On every episode, I talk to great thinkers and doers from different walks of life who are at the forefront of positively impacting society. Our conversations focus on their specific journeys to achieving their goals. We talk mindsets, books, advice, and tools they use to keep them motivated. All the key ingredients you need for a happy and fulfilling life. I hope you enjoy this next episode.
There's so many nuances about Blackness that can prevent me feeling like I can have the confidence to do it, to actually do it. So I think
Explain that a bit.
No, what I mean is that, for example, in a Black community, typical like my community back home, the first thing they feel like is you need to show success. I don't know if you know the concept. Like you need to drive a nice car. You need to you need to flash. In order to be recognized as something in the community. And then when they're done with that, they can hurt you because of that, because they feel like, oh no, why is she being, I don't know, why is she so doing well, why is she doing well, etc. Like you can get hurt in the Black community by virtue of like having big ideas, is what I'm saying. Like it's very hard, like especially if it's your own community where you come from. Like they can just feel like, oh no, you think you're, oh, what is this, and that's been my main issue.
Let's go. Hi Nomathemba, how are you?
Hi, I am okay, and how are you?
I'm great, thank you. Thanks for coming on to the Changemakers podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very excited to be here as well.
Great, and I love the energy. So you're an engineer, right? A chemical engineer, I believe. Today I want to switch it up a bit and talk less. I hope it's not too much of a curveball for you. Talk less about you becoming a chemical engineer, but more about you being part of the Engineers Without Borders NGO, and also just touch quite a bit, because you sent me, I asked you if you had anything that you've written or more details about you, and you sent me this beautiful piece that you wrote, and you're such an exquisite writer, so I really enjoyed reading that article. So it made me think, it would be good to hear more about, your upbringing, your background, the influence that your grandparents had on you, and your current, view of the world, particularly of Black people and Africa. So I would like us to touch on those, I would say 3 themes, so it will be, you as an engineer, but more as part of the NGO, Engineers Without Borders. It will be your background growing up, your grandparents' influence in your perspective about Africa and the world today. And, a third, just bringing those 2 together in terms of how, I think you defined yourself as a socially conscious engineer, so I want that to also be like that third theme, of our conversation today. So without further ado, we'll start with just the first question, who is, Nomathemba, where were you born and raised? Where did you go to school? And how did you get to be working for this company, Caterpillar, that you're working for currently?
Okay, I'll be brief, not 10 minutes.
Sure,
so I
please.
was born in Skumansdal, in a village called Skumansdal in Mpumalanga. It's quite close to Kruger National Park. So I was raised, at the time I lived with my grandparents, so my granddad and my grandmom, and it was a very interesting dynamic because my granddad was very busy with like community development. He was a big community developer. He built like 27 centers for the disabled in the region. So as a child, I spent my day going to school in the morning, and then afternoon, I know that it's time to go to the center and do the community work with my granddad, or just bother him while he did the work. And then we'd walk home, and then he'd tell me a story when I get home, and then we'd water the garden, and then sleep time, and then we start again. So that was like the basis of my upbringing. And then I moved quite a bit, because my mom was in KZN and my dad was still in Pumalanga. So I lived with my dad in Malalan for a while. And then I moved to KZN and Eshowe, where I lived with my mom and my stepdad there. And then I moved to Wits, where I did, at the time, there was this big debate about the nationalization of mines. And I wanted to be president at the time when I was a baby. So I thought I want to be the smartest president, with an engineering background, so that when they talk about beneficiation of minerals, I know what they're talking about from a scientific perspective. I need to have the science, guys. So my dad was like, "Yeah, and you're good at math and science." So I was like, "Yeah, but do I actually did metallurgy, so I did metallurgical and materials engineering. So I learned about the processes and stuff. Yeah, but I guess first year came, and then you start failing a few courses and then you just like, oh my god, what is this, so when I started first year, I really I struggled. And then I remember I spent that December with my granddad, and then I was so eager to start working, like to start, and then it was so weird. I didn't get vac work for my first year of being at home, so um, I really
Yeah.
didn't connect with engineering until I joined Engineers Without Borders. It was quite interesting. I did my first vac work project with them. At the time, we were trying to clean up the Yakske River. I don't know if you know the Yakske River. It's the river between
Yeah.
Santon and Alexandra. It's very dirty. Like, yeah. So the idea
Okay.
was
Okay.
we
I
wanted
think
to
I heard
gather.
about the project.
Yes, yes, that was my
Yeah.
first project
Okay.
in life. Like, and another thing is, my granddad is such a community guy, right? So when I explained to him that no, I'm gonna do engineering, he was just like, all right. So how does that help you empower community? Because this is the life I have given you. So how's that gonna connect? So Engineers Without Borders really helped me do that connection, like to see how I could use engineering to actually empower communities. So I was very proud of that first project. And then from there, I've generally been with them for I think 8, 9 years now. And we've done various
Yeah.
projects and various things. But yeah, that's my come up story. Yeah.
Lovely. So I'm gonna get into that a bit deeper, because I like that part of what your grandfather said. It reminds me of this guy. We used to call him Rasta. I don't know if you know him because he went to vets as well, right? He used to sell books like at this other
At the
building,
life
by the
science
biology
building.
building.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, like exactly
Yeah.
that guy.
I see that
And,
guy.
and I had a conversation. You know him, yeah. So I've had a conversation with him some years ago, and he said something similar. It's like, all of you guys come here and you study and you think you look smart, but all of this hard work that you do, you guys don't go and sort of build your own communities or change, the places that you come from.
Exactly.
Rather you go and you increase, or rather you make the capitalistic system more successful than it is today. So, hey, that was like
Yo, that's heavy for a
one
child.
of the life-changing moments. Then I was like, yo, and that's true. Then I started thinking, like, okay, how do I actually now? And that time I'm doing like biomedical sciences, and I'm like, okay, how do I actually make sure that what I'm doing is gonna have a huge
An
impact in my
impact.
society?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I mean that guy, yeah, is sort of
Where
is
is
one of the
that
people
guy?
who
I
also
wonder. Like,
changed my
yeah.
perspective. I'm sure
Yeah.
he's still there in Bram. Smart guy, smart guy.
Yeah, he should have a
Anyway,
podcast himself. Yeah, yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah, I should have him on here
You
as
should have
well.
him on.
Let me not. Yeah, let me not get too sidetracked. I want to go back. You said something now. You were like you went into engineering because there was this talk about nationalizing mines, and you wanted
Yeah.
to be a president. So are you saying you no longer want to be a president after? Like, what
No,
happened to that dream?
at the time, I didn't know that there was, like, you could be president of a country or an organization, or, I just thought I was really inspired by that poem that Thabo Mbeki did. I am an African. I owe my that poem was so, he was at the time really, you felt like, oh no, to be South African, to be, it was something to be South African, to be led to want to be part of that leadership. But then, when I got to matric, I found a book by Letlapo Mpahlela, the Child of the Soil. I think that's the title. And it sort of it gave me an understanding of like how apartheid and how leadership came about, how ANC came about, how things like that happened, and how things were being handled, like how he was part of another political party and he was just looking like from outside how he was being treated, how they were being treated. So then I got to appreciate that politics is actually very complex, and I started feeling like maybe it's not the right tool for change, for real community change, Then that's when I started backtracking on the whole wanting to be president thing. I was just like, maybe I just want to empower communities,
Ah,
Yeah.
that's interesting. That's interesting. What are you saying here? So are you saying now? Okay, you read this book. You find that it's so complex for you to bring about a change in your community. So the political route is not the way to go.
Yes, for
So
me
you
it was like,
decided to be an
no.
engineer, right? But now you're working as a strategic, what is it, strategic
Yes.
advisor to the manager in terms of business development, right, for
Yes.
Caterpillar. And Caterpillar is a company that manufactures mining and construction equipment, right? So do you feel that now that job is doing that for you? That you feel like you're changing the community, or is that just put the bread on the table, but there are other things that you are doing on the side, to
That's such a
actually
hard
have that
question.
impact?
No, okay. So in any case, part of what my grandfather taught me, or what I was growing up around, was a very Africa-centric sort of environment. I remember I was in grade 3, and I was in the same class as one of Kofi Annan's grandchildren, and I cared. Like, they used to talk a lot about Somalia, and yeah, like what's happening there, like, and I just realized, okay, my grandfather's doing this great work, but my grandfather's work was, at the time, because I was young, I was only seeing like what he was doing for my community. And then I realized that, oh my word, there's so much work to be done in Africa. There's so much that needs to happen. So my current position is very interesting because I get to every day deal with West Africa, East Africa, as well as Southern Africa, just from an analytical perspective. So I'm getting to understand, like, holistically, in the 54, 55 countries that we have, like what's actually happening in the economy. Like, because I don't think I can bring change right now. I feel like when you want to bring change into any environment, you need to learn the environment first. So right now I am using this platform that I have, or the role that I have, to try and build relationships, and hopefully eventually I'll get to travel and see these other areas. And the idea for me is really to start to understand and appreciate the complexity and the differences and the similarities between the different African nations, and why we're here and how we got ourselves like to where we are. So I'm not necessarily president, or nor am I like actually like helping with beneficiating minerals in any way, but I personally am gaining a strong appreciation for the complexity of what is the African economy, like holistically. And what I like about the work that Caterpillar does is that we have a presence in 54 countries, in actually like across Africa. So it's a company that can it influences, and we build, right? So we're earth movers. So if we're there, we know that there's some construction happening, there's some mining happening, there's some agri work happening. So it just gives me an idea and appreciation of the different pockets of economic growth that is happening all across Africa, and I enjoy seeing that on a daily basis. Like,
Yo,
mm,
that's lovely.
mm,
So that's the work that you're doing, but
yeah,
I want you to get a bit deeper if you can,
yes,
on these connections that you are building. You spoke about learning the similarities, understanding the complexities, the differences between South Africa and other countries.
Yes.
And making connections with other people all over Africa. So what's your plan, if you don't mind letting us in?
Okay.
What do you plan to do? What do you want to do with all these connections and this information that you've been
that I'm gathering?
and learning? Yeah.
No, my
Do
big
you want
belief,
to be
right?
the president of the United States of Africa?
Or maybe the Secretary General, whatever. Like nothing fancy. No, my thing is, okay, I think and I strongly believe that a united Africa can do better, like for itself. We have everything here. Like we have the minerals, we have the sun, we have the land, we have water. We have a lot of things, good things going on for us. And I traveled quite a bit. And then I realized that for myself as a person, all these other nations that are not in Africa, they're so established, the tech is so established, everything is so established, yet Africa still has a long way to go when it comes to just ramping up. And if you're watching, Africa is actually like gonna, in a couple of years' time, in 30 years from now, we need to, right now we're in that phase where we need to build Africa up so that future generations grow up in an environment that is conducive for them infrastructure wise. So from an economic perspective, I just know that Africa is the next boom. But I do want that boom to impact Africans. I don't know if that makes sense. Like oftentimes, like it can miss us, right? If we Africans are not involved, if we're not leading the organizations, if we're not ourselves like distributing products, if we're not promoting inter-African trade, it can miss us. Literally, yeah. It's already happened before, so it can happen again. So my thing is I just want to be at the forefront. I want to know. I want to, like, when they talk about who are the experts in inter-African trade, in understanding African economics, I want to be there at the forefront having that discussion, because I feel like Africans cannot sit back and watch Africa grow without them being the core leaders of that. And I also feel like we have this ability to interpret Africa in a way that other people cannot. I'll give you a very basic example. Like, the sun, in Zulu, we call the sun Ilanga, right? So when I was in the DRC, like there were so many boards that say Ilang. Like in the DRC, they don't speak, there's a lot of languages, but they speak French primarily. So then I just saw this board that says, even there, it says Galanga. And then I asked them, like, okay, so what does this mean to you guys? And it's like the element of, it's the sun. I mean, to them, it's just that they pronounce it like maybe slightly differently. And I just couldn't believe how many things that I knew just from being Norma from Mpumalanga that are in Congo, essentially at an elemental level. But because we've created, not us, but like life has created so many barriers, there's this memory that we don't have. Like there's this history that we don't have, that we don't realize that we are the same people. So we probably have met at some point, and then we've distributed over a few years, etc., etc. So my thing is, if Africans are the ones leading the conversation, it becomes so much easier to break down the barriers, because now Nomathemba can learn that, okay, there was an entire Bantu migration that happened, and therefore that's why I can relate to these people's culture. At some point, our cultures were intertwined, There's a lot, like, for me, it becomes a richer experience when you have Africans building the Africa that they want to see in the future.
Yeah.
So for me, I just want to be there. I want to, where's that action?
We should be in the forefront of our own solution and be able to also eat, right?
Yes.
And not just be, not eat in the sense of just being consumers, but also, like, and when I say eat, I mean, who's this professor? He's quite popular. I'm forgetting his name, where he says, we need to start having a seat on the table where we are actually feeding. So we also part of the capital holders, instead of being a servant, or we are just the people who are getting the crumbs from under the table after dinner is done. So I feel you there, that we need to start making, our 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 seats, ready, and make sure that we get there. So I think it's quite good what you're trying to do, for not just for yourself but for Africa. So I can see that your grandfather, has been a great influence in terms of how you view yourself and the world and what you want to do for Africa as a whole. So I want to step back, and there's the tricky thing when you think, you want to drive a conversation in a certain way, then it goes a certain route,
Direction, yeah.
which is fine, which is great. But I want to try to connect now, because you spoke about engineering without borders, being what sort of made engineering make sense to you.
Yeah.
Right. And now my understanding is that you are the director of the youth leadership portfolio there.
Yeah.
So I want to get a bit on that in terms of how do you see now, going also back to your grandfather's statement about how engineering is gonna change the community, going back to Rasta's comment, to me about impact of what you're studying, and how sort of all these things come together to the vision that you want to see for Africa. Do you see a connection between the two?
Definitely, in the sense that, so at Engineers Without Borders, what my portfolio is trying to do is we trying to catalyze the development of resilient, resourceful, and results-driven engineers that have a social conscious. Now, the idea with that is that it's important to have, you'll see that in the future a lot of engineers will go on to be leaders of organizations. They'll have a lot of influence in terms of wherever they land up. I mean, engineers do massive things in life, but if you've started an engineer off in their career with a real understanding of society and societal needs and environmental needs, and how their little contribution, even at varsity level, can lead to some sort of a change later on. It becomes powerful in the long term. The idea is that so what we do is every year we try and we bring like 40 leaders of the different chapters, and chapters are like these subgroups that are in universities, and then we train them on like different type of skills that they would need in order to lead. But what I'm trying to say is that they are already taking charge. They're already leaders of these little chapters, but ultimately they're going to be leaders of very big organizations one day. And we want those responsible ideologies. We want them, those conscious concepts. We want them to be leaders that are not just leading because, oh, I'm qualified, but leaders that really do want to bring a change about in whatever space they end up being in, because they obviously branch out into different spaces. So I feel like EWBSA is just literally it's like a place to like put a spark in somebody's heart to say, yes, you are smart, but your smarts can actually help improve Africa. Your intelligence can kickstart conversations that can get you into rooms that will lead to some sort of a change. And really, you see it in the people that have gone through the program. People are doing amazing things. We've got friends that are building in Dubai. I've got friends that, and all of us went through the similar programs. I've got friends that now, like, they're living abroad and doing, like, chasing their dreams. And then there's people that are, like, still doing here, like, that are here, that are, like, have startups. I can say I'm now starting to see like the longer term effect of the work that we do at EWB. So I'm quite happy with that alignment. But at the same time, I will say that for me personally, I have learned so much at EWB. I have learned everything about community development, about this and that and that. And I'm yet to actually impact my community. I don't feel like I have entirely impacted my community the way I want to. And the reason for that is simply because you get to understand that a lot of concepts, it's great to teach people concepts and that, but not a lot of us are challenging ourselves to actually go back home and say, do the projects and actually, own our own NGOs. We're not doing enough of that. I feel like we still there's still a gap, and maybe we're still young, but there's still more we can do for our community. Definitely,
Yeah.
I feel.
So I mean, maybe we get a bit deeper, even deeper
Yeah.
onto that, and make it personal for you. So you're an engineer, smart, got your degree,
Yes.
traveled all over Africa, 14 countries, got exposed to all these many things. You've been part of EWB. You're conscious, what issues we face, how we can change our communities. And you're talking about concepts, right? That for me, it sounds like they're ideas, but you have not really, sort of implemented them. So there's nothing tangible yet. So why do you think there's that gap between, acting, out what you want to see? So why haven't you particularly done that yet?
Yeah, a lot of reasons, right? Like, okay, so it's
Yeah.
no, I mean that's like because my bar is my granddad, right? And he had 27 centers, so you can imagine, like, and he did this. His back was broken, like he wasn't fully body able, so he had harder
Oh.
situations to overcome than me. Right. So what's my problem? Right. Okay. I will say this. I think for me, um, I've been busy. Like I've just genuinely been traveling and I didn't realize how much disconnect I had between myself and my community. I go home every end of the year and things like that, but I don't go home frequently enough to spend time with the community and fully understand what their challenges are. I understand the challenges because I grew up there. Like they have plumbing issues. They have they plumbing is like a big issue there. Like you know, there's different types of problems that they have, and I have many communities that I can attest to calling home. But honestly, I think at this stage in my career, I haven't gotten enough influence to bring about the sort of change that I want. So that's why I wrote the book, right? Because I felt like in traveling, in learning, in understanding what's actually happening, I realized that the first challenge is self. I don't know if that helps or is clear. The first person I needed to overcome was myself. The first person I needed to teach about Africa and teach about being an African in the holistic sense is myself. And I'm still dealing with that human being because, she's hard. But what I'm trying to say is that once you like understand like that you yourself have to walk the mile, then you have like issues. I feel like that's where I am now, where it's just like I've realized that I've learned all these skills and I've traveled and I see that okay, there's this complexity of being black and the complexity of my history as a black person, and I fully have all the skills required to go back into my community and do well. But then there's so many nuances about blackness that can prevent like me feeling like I can have the confidence to do it, to actually do it. So I think yeah.
Explain that a bit.
No, what I mean is that, for example, I mean, in a black community, typical like my community back home, the first thing
Yeah.
they feel like is you need to show success. I don't know if you know the concept. Like you need to drive a nice car. You need to you need
Sure.
to flash. In order to be recognized as something in the community. And then when they're done with that, they can hurt you because of that, because they feel like, oh no, why is she being, I don't know, why is she so doing well? Why is she doing well, etc. Like you can get hurt in the black community by virtue of like having big ideas, is what I'm saying. Like it's very hard, like especially if it's your own community where you come from. Like they can just
where you
feel
come
like, oh
from.
no, you think you're, oh, what is this,
Sheesh.
and that's
Yeah.
been my main issue. Like I have these concepts, we have the land back home, there's all these ideas that I am ready to execute, but inside of me there's just a fear that, okay, and it's the worst thing because it's literally me fighting my blackness. I don't know if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah, it
yeah.
does. It does. It
Yeah,
does.
so
Yeah.
that's where I'm
Yeah,
at.
that's
Like
crazy.
it's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to touch a bit on this part of, and fighting self, but first focus on this concept. You have this concepts, things that you want to do. So what do you think, that we as a country, as a people need to do, to be ready for what you called the Africa boom, in the coming years? What do we need to do today?
Yeah, I think it's already started. I must be honest with you. Africa is a big profit generator for a lot of organizations. And I think, I mean, there's things you can do in the short term and in the longer term. In the short term, I feel like the expansion into the rest of Africa, especially as South Africans, has to be led by South Africans, like from organizations that are coming from wherever. The reason I say that, not just South Africans, but Africans in general, like Africans where they are. So if it's in South Africa, you know, what I'm trying to say is that like there's value in Africans being the ones that are leading these different entities. And it's so controversial, but there's also a lot of African Americans that are coming back, and Africans in diaspora, like from all over the place, that are also coming back to lead organizations here. And but there's a way about it, right? So there's two ways about it. There's a way in which they come here and we share skills and we all learn and we get empowered. But there's also like a way in which it can be done, and it's sort of perpetuating the same thing that we're avoiding, where there's an authoritative sort of mentality looking down on Africans. So you just need a way where you can, even South Africans do it sometimes, where they feel like, oh, we're South Africans, we're separate from the rest of Africa, and that's literally the problem, right? It's like Africans everywhere. Um, it's not, it's a superiority complex that we were taught, I feel. And I think it predominantly comes from the fact that we're not one. Like we're not united. We are all scattered everywhere, and everybody is trying to understand what they understand about their personal history, about African history, about where they come from, and like where. So my thing is, if you want to be ready for Africa's boom, one, it's important to learn the languages. If you're a person that is good at languages, learn the different languages. And I mean, in terms of the economy, the languages that are hot in the rest of Africa would be your French, your Portuguese, and then English. So that's one way. But the second way is really working. Like at work, there's a lot of, I mean, at our different entities that we work for, there's a lot of expansion into the rest of Africa. So do that. Work for a rest of Africa department. That will really give you insights. And another thing is traveling. Like, don't be afraid to actually go, especially as Africans. We need to travel more in our own territory, because this is literally the most beautiful place in the world. And I mean, I have proof. I know what I'm talking about. I just feel like it's great. Like the rest of the world, there's a
I
lot
should
of
follow you
buildings.
on Instagram. I hope the pictures are there.
Yes. There's a lot of buildings. I mean, there are really beautiful places like in the rest of the world, but I
Yeah.
really think in terms of natural, in terms of original, in terms of just everything we have, especially with South Africa, we have every type of landscape that you can think of. We have the desert, we have the sea, we have so much. So it's important for Africans, especially young Africans, to be excited to just go see what's happening in Ghana, to go see what's happening in Tanzania, to have that desire and passion to integrate our environments as much as we're so different. Yeah, so I would say to prepare for that, get the knowledge, like be in the forefront and try and really work on projects and things that will get you closer and then read also. Like reading is just such a easy way of having an experience with another African and understanding where they come from. And on top of that, now there's the internet. There's so many people that are talking about like consciousness and being African and being black in this space. So you just follow the people that are creating this type of content, because I'll have you know that like it's not like because I care about Africa, I'm the first person to care about Africa. No, there's been so much work before me. Like that's why I'm taking my time to really understand and position what I need to do differently from what everybody else has done, because everybody else has pushed their agenda to where they can. I mean, even if you were in the US, there's people that have created literature to talk about their experiences as people. There's so much. You just need to research and care. I think that's where you need to start, by care. If you can start there, literally, it just
Yeah,
grows.
yeah. I mean, that's lovely. One of the things that you touched on, because I read this article now and I'm thinking as I'm listening to you, and I'm hearing your passion about Africa and and making sure that Africa is a great place to live for the next generations, etc. And you mentioned in your article, that you have there are a lot of people, including you, right, who are now qualified. You have global experience. You could go anywhere, right? And go live, maybe a softer life, and stop trying to solve our issues here, And I mean, there are people who are doing that, right? And I think it makes sense. What do they say? Look after for self first, and then other things later, But what do you think, for you is like, because I mean, you said now you're also struggling, right? You have these ideas, but you can't just go jump into your community. It's a struggle. So even to help and actually to improve your own community, you still feel like there's another, hoop, for you to jump. So why not just forget and like, okay, it's whatever, let me stay in the north, or maybe let me move, to Ireland or elsewhere, maybe in Europe, and go live a softer life. What's making you stay? What's making you have this
Yeah, the conviction I have.
sort
I
of,
can't.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say now, before I explain my conviction, I honestly, every time the fuel goes up, I'm just like, my friends overseas had a honestly, tell you the honest truth. That's how I feel sometimes. But and it's not a bad thing, right? Like moving and traveling. I have family that's also living abroad. I just think it's not a bad thing. It's literally just a matter of making sure that the money they make somehow also impacts our economies this side. If they can invest in projects this side, because they do make a lot of money. And the idea is just like, how does your money then at the end of the day come back to Africa and regenerate your community where you come from? So that's one way of doing it. For me personally, I do feel like I want to be at the forefront of the action, right? So I really want to like put my hands into the development of this continent, however, in whatever small way that I can, right? And it doesn't necessarily need me to be staying in South Africa, but I will say that I feel like if I was living back home in Mpumalanga, or even Esho or in KZN, I do feel like it would be easier for me to create a network and penetrate and be able to do the community work that I need to do. But because I'm in Gauteng, I'm so far removed from what's actually happening back home that I mean, I get a call here and there and I go there when I can, but I'm not able to impact my community the way I want, the way I feel I should, simply because I'm far removed. And I think that's the same concept. If you live abroad and then you are in Ireland and your life is soft, I mean, the issues you tend to like honestly forget. Like you tend to honestly like not forget, but you get desensitized until you come back here and you're just like, oh my god. I mean, just the difference between living in Tembisa and living in Boxburg. You forget, Uti, there's like actual everyday poverty that's happening. There's actual everyday life also that's happening. There's like economies that are starting up. It's so much easier to connect with your community when you are living inside of it and you are like aware of the challenges. So for me, I'm still here and I am going to probably stay here for a very long time simply because I do feel like my work is here. Like the people I want to grow with are in Africa, and the economies that I would like to see go into the future are here. But I do feel like I can even do better. I feel like being in Joburg just it desensitizes me in a way. And when I go back home, that's when I always come up with all these ideas, and then it's just a matter of now I need to go back to Joburg, and I don't have time to execute, you know. So I do think when you closer to the fire, you're able to action out more. But I do think there's just different ways to cut because I mean, not all the Africans in diaspora are trying to come back home. No, some people are really happy, like earning in USD and in all these other currencies. It's just a matter of how do we get our money as a community of Black people to work at empowering this community of, Africa as a whole, actually. Yeah, that's how
Yeah,
I feel.
that's lovely. Yeah, no, I feel you. I feel you. So,
Yeah.
I want to, as we're nearing, to a close of our chat. You spoke about reading because for many of us it won't be too easy to travel, especially now when our borders are being closed, even by other African countries that we're not allowed to go. But anyway, except that even if there was no corona, so most of us wouldn't be able to like travel and experience Ghana or DRC or Kenya, or Tanzania, etc. So you spoke about using books as a way to learn more about, our continent and our people. So, do you have any maybe 3, 4, 5 recommendations that you could give us? Read this to get better understanding of this and that. So just your 3 to 5 recommendations, if that's not too much. Is it too many? I thought you read like hundreds.
No, I know. Like I've been watching, like not this year. This year's been a bad reading year for me. But I will say that, like, okay, it depends on what you're interested in, right? So I'm very interested in history. The reason I'm interested in history is because I went to government schools at some point, and like we just didn't do history. We did history lights.
We did do, yeah. I know what you mean.
I did Jan van Riebeeck history. I didn't do like Black consciousness history. So I read a lot from that perspective, and I also read a lot of African business books, right? But I have one book that that changed my life. I feel 2 actually. Yeah, I brought them here. So this one was I talked about it in the article also. This one, it's the destruction of the Black civilization.
Okay.
Yeah, this book, it's a hard read. Like it's hard to read because of I just think the concepts are like super abstract. But what it was trying to explain is the history of Black people prior, like basically, if you just check here, it says like 200 AD to 450 BC. So it tries to explain like pre-colonial Black history. So what were Africans actually doing before, everybody arrived?
Before we were found.
Yeah, before we were discovered, yeah. And then it's a really good book. I really recommend it. But it is hard to read, I will say that, because in like the way he explains it, it's a scientific. It's like he did research to try and explain, and the research is so hard because like when he was looking at the writings that exist, he realized that like things are interpreted differently. If you're an African, you can interpret something in one way, but if you are a non-African that's here to basically, I don't know, impress a colonizer or something like that, then something can go one way. When I went to Zimbabwe, I found a very simple book. I really liked this book because I think it's like one of
The roots of the
the
Bantu.
Bantu. Yes, it's such a good book. It's easy to read. It's written by a Zimbabwean scholar. This guy, Ananias, I think Chukwudera, and he explains like he explains the same things that the other one explains. So pre-colonial times, but much simpler language, and also it's images and customs and traditions that you know about as a person that's grown up in South Africa. Because that's the one thing about South Africans that's unique, is that we were oppressed, but on our own. Like we didn't, a lot of us were not part of the slave trade. So your ancestors, you are closer to that tree than most other, Africans in diaspora. So, and other Africans have that same advantage. But what I really liked was that when I read it, I was like, oh, I know that. I know about those surnames. I know about that. I know. So then you start to see that, oh, that custom, the tradition of doing this, the tradition of doing that, it all comes from a certain part of history. And I really enjoyed reading that. And that's what I was also trying to do with my book. I wanted to make it easy.
Where's your book? Show your book too on the screen, please.
Yeah.
Yes. So that will be the third one. Yes.
Yes. I recommend this.
A
It's a
Nguni
poetry
Scribe.
book. Yeah, it's just a poetry book, and it really it's very light in terms of verses. Those ones. It's my story, but it's the story of most African people that are my age group. Literally, I speak to a lot of things that I just feel like we should be discussing. I also challenge the concept of God. So I say at the back of the book, I say God is black. Oh, that always gets me in so much trouble.
Read that a bit.
I say
What do
God
you
is
say?
black. God is black. Spirituality is black and female. Spirituality is black. Spirituality is black and female. It's part of a poem that I wrote when I was. I wrote this poem when I was very upset. Something had happened in corporate.
Okay.
But the reason I say that, or why I'm challenging the identity of God, is because as Black people, especially as South Africans, we have this perception, Gamlungwami. I don't know if you understand what I mean when I say that.
Yeah,
It's like we have Mlungwami, and we have that. And what it does is that because we place white people on such a pedestal, and really, I mean, it's just our history, as a country where we come from. We can never conceptualize God as a Black person, let alone a female. So I was just like, if God is such an enormous, and because God is such an enormous, God cannot create something that's not in His image and likeness, right? So there's a scripture that says that. It says, you are made in His image and likeness. So I was challenging that. I was just like, okay, if I'm made in image and likeness of God, and I'm Black and I'm female, therefore God must be Black and female. But it's a concept that is too large for people. It's too large. The reason it's so large is because
that's super. So what, you're not saying God is not white. You're basically saying God can be whoever you want Him to be, because He's made in your likeness and your image. Rather, you are made in His image and His likeness. Yes. So if I can also white, come and say, I can also say exactly. I can say God is Black and is a man.
Yes.
And someone who's white can do the same thing.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Or Hispanic or anything. Yes. That's the reality of it.
You're personalizing who God is for you, not necessarily saying, guys, God is definitely Black and definitely female. God takes many forms, and you are made in His image. So
for as many people,
so God can be. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay,
for as many people
that's interesting.
that Yeah, because I feel like God cannot create all these different people
Yeah,
and create us with so many variations and what, and then be one thing. Oh, like that would be so shocking
yeah,
of God, like,
yeah,
where did you conceptualize me from then if I don't come from you? So I just feel like the image of God has always been, one person. And I felt like if black people start to understand that, like, our value in history and our value going forward will increase and will stay. I mean, it'll always be there, but our value will be appreciated more if we ourselves appreciate ourselves. And that starts from something as basic as God, like understanding. Because I
yeah.
I then I then took
Should
this
we
book
should
to my
we should
grandparents,
stop
right?
we should
Yeah.
stop hanging those. We grew up in our houses. They're hanging the portraits of
Oh,
Jesus,
white
and
Jesus.
so yeah. So are you saying we should have that out? But
No, I mean,
let's
I
not
feel
get
like,
into that. Let's not get into that.
yeah, yeah. You believe what you want to believe, but what I was just trying to say is that, firstly, I believe that, like,
Yeah,
in the African, if you read the books in the African culture, you've always defined God according to the oldest ancestor. That's why we have clan names and things like that, where it's the history of the people in your family. And the reality of it is, like, people will define God however they want. But what I was just trying to do is break into that conversation, because I took it to my grandmother afterwards, of course. I went to my grandma. I was just like, so, I think God's black. And my grandma was just like, I've never thought of that. And I was just like, yeah, that's exactly what I mean. Like, and I just think traveling helped me, because I met a lot of people. Then I realized that, wow, their histories are so aligned with my history. And I mean, when I think of when they explain where they come from in Africa, and I'm just like, it's so sad that Africans don't have that appreciation. I didn't grow up having an appreciation of being as close to, like, my lineage as I am. Whereas when I see a friend of mine from the US who has to read books to sort of get where they came from and which boats, what. And then there's this thing called ancestry.com. They have to do ancestry.com to find themselves. Kantimina, I know exactly where my people are lying. Like, I know where their people are lying. I can drive there. You know what I'm saying? But then that appreciation isn't there. So what I was trying to just do was get us locally as Africans excited about the concept of being African, and understanding that there's, like, so much richness in our tongues, in the fact that we can speak our home languages, in the fact that we can still go home, and, like, there's so much richness in that there's so many people globally that are looking for that same comfort, that same homeliness. And when I traveled and I had all these conversations, I was like, I hear y'all, but South Africans are not ready. Like, we need to work in ourselves. Like, we still need to work in ourselves, because we don't love each other. There's a lot of xenophobia. We don't even love ourselves. So my book is just more about yourself, looking at yourself as an African and challenging your own perception and thoughts around concepts like God, concepts like your family, concepts like other Africans, and concepts like things that are uncomfortable to us, like, things that are more inclined to our traditions and things like that. So I just wanted us to get to a place where being black is not such a taboo. Like, it's not like, we are who we
like
are.
being
And
black, not
yes.
being black as in black, not just because pigmentation, but
Like
understanding
being
a black
exactly.
person more holy.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
man.
yes,
Yeah, I
yes,
like that.
literally.
Because I think I said 15 minutes ago, nearing to a close, but now
Oh
I'm
yeah, you
captivated.
we
Well, I
can
can't
cut
wait
it off.
to get my hands on the book, right?
Okay.
I'm really looking forward to reading it. And since we're talking books and we're talking, what can I call it? Self-love. you
Self
know
love.
um you've already started on the journey of trying to educate us, particularly as a black people, to love and to understand ourselves and to see ourselves as valuable first before we can want that from other people. And I think I really liked what you said there.
Yeah.
So for you, going forward, Where do you plan to now take? Because I mean, our conversation shifted from doing things on a practical level, like from the economics, so we're talking systemic change, in terms of how the economic structured, how do engineers go back to help their communities, to solve, the problems that we have. And then there's this other social, right, which is also a systemic issue, right? Social issue of how we see ourselves, how we see our brothers and sisters from other countries. So for you now on a social space, and now also on this economic and more practical or maybe scientific space, how do you as Nomathemba plan to bring these things that you know and understand together, and to sort of get us to that point where we are now really, Africa, a united Africa, an Africa that understands and loves itself and believes in itself?
Well, I don't know if we can achieve all that in one lifetime, but yeah.
But it's
So
good to dream.
it,
That's where we have to start,
the
right?
idea is to try, like the idea is to try.
Yeah.
So yeah, when I put together the collection of poems, I thought that was gonna be the thing, right? Like, oh, I'm gonna go out and then cover hits, and then I'm still trying to figure out the logistics of that, and definitely I definitely for my personal life want to live a life that reflects both those principles. So I want to be the sort of African that I can point as an example at the end of my life and say, hey, there's an African that empowered Africa physically, tangibly in terms of the economy, but also moved people's perceptions while doing that. Because I feel like a lot of the African leaders that are all poets in one form or the next. So, I mean, I feel like poetry is a language. It's emotive. It's able to transport a person into like a certain realm of thinking. And I feel like that's the most big work you can do, like the changing of a person's heart. I feel like we need a lot of that right now in South Africa. If you just look at the news, there's always something, and it's always about self-hate. I mean, when you doing this, you think of gender-based violence, you think of femicide, you think of all these things that are happening. It's really because like people are hurt, like people are really, really hurt, and there's not enough platforms for people to express themselves and sort of become better people and change and rehabilitate themselves. So for me, I just think I'm gonna do projects that are aligned with my vision of where I want Africa to be, and I want the work that I do in corporate to also be aligned with a growing Africa. And I think that's literally what I'm gonna do for the rest of my life. I'm gonna write more poetry. I'm gonna get more educated on the history of this place and the future of it and the current politics. But at the same time, I'm gonna make sure that where I can move the economy of the whole continent in one format or the other. And then thirdly, I want to participate, right? So I want to have my own business, and I want to have my own space where I am selling products, or I am involved in making sure that I'm providing services, etc., that are helping empower my community, firstly, and then secondly, bringing a bit of joy to people, and then bring a bit of appreciation of like the concept of being African. So I'm definitely gonna just like invest in growing the business side of the concept, but at the same time, I just think a lot of it takes personal work. So I've put in a lot of hours into myself to try and just make sure that as I do this work, my intent is correct, and my intent is going to come out in the execution of what it is I'm supposed to do. So going forward, like if I were to put that in tangible terms, I'm going to keep working in the Africa region. I'm going to keep promoting sort of like the knowledge portion of our history and our current. And then I'm going to keep doing NGO work because I feel like we all have some sort of a social responsibility. And then lastly, I'm definitely going to start my own organization. So far, we've conceptualized it and we've called it Nguni Tribe. And the idea is just there's a lot that we're gonna put into it, but the idea is to distribute a few products that are aligned with community development, but at the same time earning a profit of some sort.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. Maybe
social
asking this question in
entrepreneurship.
10 years. Yeah, social
Yeah,
entrepreneurship.
no, 10 years, no, I'll call you. You launching, I'm sure you're launching
Call me.
soon. So
Call me.
we're going to have
Yeah,
another interview and also invite me to your launch.
I will.
So I was going to ask you, what's your favorite African quote from a book except yours? Or
Oh,
maybe
wow.
from your dad or your grandparents?
I think a line that I like to refer back to. No, I just need to think if it's my line or not.
It's fine even if it's yours.
It's just seeing like an Africa built by Africans for Africans. I feel like that's something I always live by. That okay, if we can see an Africa that's built by Africans for Africans, wow, what a wow!
You'll be
Like,
happy. What a
yeah,
wow. It's a wow.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
On that note,
But I don't know,
think
like I don't know, like a common phrase that that's just the common phrase that I live by. But
yeah.
I don't know what to quote.
No, but that's your code. I mean, and that's your truth, right?
Yeah.
Because work, that's what you're doing. Your own business, that's what you're doing. Your books, that's what you're doing. It's actually building Africa in all ways,
Yeah.
business and otherwise. So I think that's great. And on that note, I don't want to keep you forever. I see that your next meeting is coming on. I know, it's been an exciting conversation. I feel like you and I can talk for
Forever.
another 5 hours, or forever, just on Africa, and for you to like take me through all that you've learned.
I'm still learning.
So I
I must be
appreciate.
honest with you.
And
Like,
you're still
there's
learning.
so
Imagine
much.
when you
Yeah.
feel like I've learned, that means I can listen to you for a week.
No, there's so much to learn.
Yeah. But no, thank you very much,
Thank
Nomathemba,
you.
for coming onto the Changemakers podcast, and for allowing yourself to be put in the corner. I know that most of the questions are not expected, and I also didn't think I would be asking them, but I'm glad that you are free, and you allow yourself to be vulnerable, for us to interact, on a deeper and a realer, more real level as much as possible. So I really appreciate your sincerity and your time, for coming on here, and I wish you all the best, with all the plans that you have for yourself and your businesses, and for us as Africans. I can't wait.
Thank you. That's so encouraging. Thank you so much. It was a really nice platform. Yeah. It's my first interview, so, thank you.
This has been a Smarty School production. Catch you on the next episode. Stay smart and keep well. If you enjoyed this episode of Changemakers, please subscribe if you have not already. Help us spread the word by rating and commenting on the podcast. We like hearing from you, as this will help us create better content and reach more people. Share this episode with your friends, family, and colleagues whom you think will benefit or like this sort of content. If you have questions for me or my guest, or topics that you would like us to discuss next time, email me at podcasts@smartyschool.co.za.